So I was going to show y'all a Nekroz Dogmatica list, but unfortunately, the Nadir Servant hit to 1 really destroys that deck's consistency and overall game plan. Despite how much I wanted to keep the engine and just bump up the number of Maximus in my deck, in testing it proved to be too bricky and inconsistent. So, after scouring my year's worth of previous Nekroz list for something that could work, I realized I needed to innovate. So I made the deck list you see today. This deck is made to go first. Unfortunately, Master Duel isn't best of 3, so I had to choose one or the other because siding isn't a thing yet, and going first is almost always more consistent and a stronger strategy. The main strategy is to trigger Zaborg the Mega Monarch more consistently than in a Monarch deck, as well as making full use of Nekroz floodgates and generic floodgates to prevent our opponent from playing the game. Let's get into the deck list. This list is quite heavy on card points. This list needs a minimum of 13 ultra rares, 8 of which are fairly specific to this type of deck. That's about 390 UR points. This list needs 28 super rares, 14 of which are specific. It's about 840 SR points. I can't even come close to calling this a budget deck, but it's still somehow cheaper than Ghost Tricks and Master Duel. Yeah, imagine that. Let's put this deck list into a more viewable format. Now, this is going to be a little out of order how I'm going to explain this deck, but it's going to be key to understanding its gameplay. Our extra deck is almost exclusively a tool to send to the graveyard to trigger effects. The important ones are Herald of Alklight for ritual searching, Natis for popping cards, and Shadal Alpacone for access to the Shadal engine, specifically Shadal Schism, Fossil Machine Skullwagon for its engraved spell and trap destruction, Fossil Warrior Skull Knight for its engraved monster popping, and Psy-Frame Gear Omega for its recycling, and last, Totally Awesome for its recycling. The Halki Fibrax combo is there for OTK pressure, and Cross Sheep is there if we ever need to link for value. Now, let's go on to why this extra deck is the way it is. Here's our main deck. Starting out, we have Nekroz Kaleidoscope. This card lets us send a monster from our extra deck to the grave to let us ritual summon a Nekroz monster with the same level. Due to a restriction with how our Nekroz monsters are worded, we can only use this to summon a level 6 or lower ritual monster. This means our two main targets are going to be Nekroz of Brynak and Nekroz of Unicorn. At this point, you should realize that this card is the reason why every level of a monster in our extra deck is usually either 4 or 6 to facilitate summoning Unicorn Brynak. We'll talk more about what our monsters do, but let's finish up our spells. Nekroz Cycle lets us ritual summon a Nekroz monster from our hand or grave using monsters in our hand or field. Nekroz Mirror lets us ritual summon a Nekroz monster from field by triggering cards from hand, field, or banishing from grave. These last two spells we run at 1 compared to Nekroz Kaleidoscope, which we run at 3, because Kaleidoscope is our main game plan, and these two one-ofs are searchable. This is thanks to every Nekroz ritual spell in grave effect. They all say you can banish this card and one Nekroz monster from grave to search another Nekroz ritual spell with a different name, unless it's Kaleidoscope, and then it can search itself. A big part of playing this deck well is knowing what to search to set up for your ritual summons. This deck is old, so it requires exact numbers when ritual summoning, so it can be a bit janky. Our main two Nekroz are Nekroz of Brynak and Nekroz of Unicorn. Every Nekroz ritual has 2 effects, one in hand and one on field. In hand, Brynak can discard himself to search for any Nekroz monster. On field, he can shuffle 2 monsters special summoned from the extra deck into the deck. Basically, Nekroz on Unicorn, when he's on field, he can negate the effects of all monsters on the field that were special summoned from the extra deck. Basically, the choice between which one to special summon is you can either go for Nekroz of Unicorn, who's a strong floodgate and Herald of the Arclight search, or you can make Brynak, who does nothing turn 1, but gives you access to the Shadal engine. Because, using Nekroz Kaleidoscope, you can dump Shadal Al Capone to summon Brynak, and Al Capone skill triggers Engrave to let you search Shadal Schism. In a blind setting, I usually lean Nekroz of Unicorn, because there's often not a dark monster in graveyard to make Shadal Wyndham, but going for the Shadal engine when you can is incredibly powerful. We also run 3 Preparation of the Rites to search these 2 cards. Backing up our main Nekroz monster, we have Nekroz Valkyrius and Nekroz Colossus, who can discard himself for any Nekroz ritual spell. This means that Nekroz Brynak can become any Nekroz ritual spell, and by extension, Preparation of Rites can become any ritual spell. Valkyrius is a battle fader. We can use him to protect our monster floodgates, and more specifically our barrier statue. His on-field effect contribute up to 2 cards to draw to him, but while this does work with the incantation monsters, we usually have a better use for our incantation cards. Lastly, we have Nekroz of Trishula, who on summon banishes 1 card each from your opponent's hand, field, and graveyard. This effect has the benefit of not targeting, but it has the massive downside of your opponent having to have at least 1 card in every location, which makes the effect a bit specific. There are many times when for one reason or the other I've just been screwed because my opponent doesn't have a card in hand, or grave. Thanks, Steve Fisher. We ritual summon Trishula in one of 2 ways. Either by using Shurit, Strategist of the Nekroz, we can count for 1 whole summon regardless of level, or we can summon it by using Nekroz Mirror and banish Brynak and Colossus and Grave. Basically, Brynak and Trishula let you summon Trishula. One more mention of Shurit, he lets you chain block Trishula's effect because he has a search on Tribute, or you can use Trishula's effect to chain block Shurit, or you can use Nekroz effect to chain block Shurits. Trishula's in-hand effect is targeting negation. So when your Nekroz of Unicorn is targeted by infinite permanence, you can negate that effect to make your opponent cry. The 2 supplemental cards in this deck to aid Nekroz Lock are Secret Village of the Spellcaster and Barrier Statue of the Turn. Since we don't always normal summon, the Water Barrier Statue makes sense, And since Yugioh is a spellcaster, we can play Secret Village. Secret Village helps us lock our opponent out from playing any engine cards or any removal like Lightning Storm. Do note that Valkyries is also a spellcaster, and the Viner of Herald can be used to out the spell if needed. Now, let's talk about the most important engine in this deck and how we can set it up. Zaborg the Mega Monarch is a level 8 that on his tribute summon can tribute one monster on the field. Then if it was a light monster, each player sends cards from the extra deck to grave equal to the level of the tributed monster. If Zaborg was tribute summoned using a light monster, you get to choose what cards your opponent sends from extra deck to graveyard. Typically, we're going to be tributing Zaborg for this, so we can send 8. Now outside of adding 5 cards to hand, if this effect resolves, you can cripple your opponent outright. You can do funny stuff like preventing Tri-Brigade to revolt from activating because you've sent to grave all of their potential link monsters. You could stop Virtual Worlds from doing literally anything, but typically you don't need to hit everything, you just need to hit the stepping stones. For example, in Lyrilusk, you don't need to hit the utopic monsters, you can just hit the little birds. What you're sending from extra deck to grave in your deck is any heralds you have left, Omega to put back a herald, Toad to add a Bryanak back to hand from grave, Alpacone to search Shaddoll Schism, and both fossil cards for ladle value. Going second, you can send a Tis. Now, this sounds insane, but how can we make it? It's a tribute summon that requires 2 monsters, right? Nekroz doesn't need a normal summon, but that's ridiculous. Well, I'm here to tell you that this is within reach. First up, we have Incantation Talismandra and Incantation Candle. Candle lets you reveal a ritual spell to special summon another incantation from the deck, and Talismandra does the same, but you need to reveal a ritual monster. On special summon, Talismandra searches a ritual monster, and Candle searches a ritual spell. This is a free search and 2 free monsters on the field, just enough to tribute summon Zaborg, and Candle is a light monster, so the full effect activates. The only downside is that, while an incantation monster is on the field, you can't special summon from the extra deck. Worst case scenario with incantation is you get hand trapped, and this is fine, because if they Ash Blossom you, the incantation just sit in hand for later use. Our second method to get monsters out in the field is through Diviner of Herald. I'm sure everyone here is tired of this card because of Drytron, so let me show you some wacky shit. Cut the combo. If we normal summon Diviner, we can dump Herald to search Bryanak. If we discard Bryanak to search Colossus, and then discard Colossus to search Nekroz cycle, we contribute Herald to special back Bryanak. This triggers Herald to special Angel 01, a light fairy monster that gives us an extra tribute summon if it has been special summoned. Him plus Bryanak is 2 monsters on field, one of which is light, so we can tribute summon Zaborg the Mega Monarch. Y'all better like and subscribe for finding this combo. I had to dig to find this. Anyway, Angel 01 isn't a total brick because he can special summon himself if you reveal a level 7 or higher monster from hand, which we have several of, because of our ritual monsters. Bit of advice. When using either of these combos, always start with Devi rituals because we don't care if they're hand trapped. On to side decks and techs. This is a new segment for what a side deck would look like with this deck, or just some fun techs you can run if you're feeling funky. First tech I found is Gizmek Uka, the festive fox of Fasundi. He special summons a monster with matching type as the opponent from deck when he's special summoned, but he special summons himself if a monster is special summoned from deck. If our opponent is playing Halki Fibrax, you can use Uka as a hand trap to special summon Barrier Statue on your opponent's turn. Typically though, because Halka Fibrax isn't being run that often as a combo starter, this might not be the best idea and you're going to end up using it to access your incantation monsters, so this might not be the best option in this format, but it is really powerful in the right format. Nekroz also plays nice, but there can be only 1, so have that fun number up your sleeve. For going second in games, run Lava Golems and Spear modes, also bringing Lightning Storm and Cosmic Cyclone. If you want a more going second oriented list, here's an old one that I made that uses Nekroz of Sophia to lock your opponent out of the extra deck if they go first. For matchups, this deck loses to Monarchs, Eldritch Dinos, and can struggle with any deck that doesn't rely on their extra deck. This deck does pretty well in the Virtual Worlds, decks that run Tri-Brigade, and decks that run Invoked engines. Nekroz cards are inherently anti-extra deck, so decks reliant on them get hurt a lot. Overall, I think this deck is a pretty fun, low, weak rogue option. That's a 6 on the Justin rating system. Nekroz has to be built to either go first or second, and that hurts the deck's overall win ratio if there's not a side deck to let the deck flex. This deck can play around 1 to 3 hand traps, depending on hand, with relative consistency. If this deck goes off, it does tend to completely blow out opponents with little chance of them recovering, but matchups can nullify this. Now, here's a portion of the deck profile where I show off gameplay. All these games were taken in Platinum and should show off the deck's potential. Thanks for watching. I got a big Yu-Gi-Oh! Tier list video coming out. It's taking so long because I wanted to go in depth into every deck, even the bad ones. I feel like I'd be a bad Yu-Gi-Oh! Player if I didn't inform my audience as to how to play Unchained Duel, or how to use Dark Dorito to set up Huge Revolution. Also, a new Vanguard set is dropping, and I'm going to be releasing a Seraph Snow deck profile, as well as a Bag Savara deck profile, and maybe a Gravidia one too. In any case, make sure to subscribe and ring that bell so you'll be notified when all my new videos come out. Thank you. See you next time.